I had a big announcement about keys, but I don't get to give it.
Oh, go ahead.
She found her keys. Yay!
Good.
We'll steal them.
Okay. So we are streaming this right now on YouTube. And
I'm out of here.
okay, bye. Bye, Felicia. The Wi-Fi here, if you need to get on Wi-Fi, which you should be really kind about not doing too much if we're streaming on YouTube, if she's using it to stream, the password is on the board here. I'm not saying it out loud on YouTube on purpose. I don't know why. But if you want to talk about the event, the social media hashtag is LFTN26. If you're posting pictures, tag us, use that hashtag, all of those things. Okay, so now we're going to hear from the Food Forest Whisperer of the Holler Homestead, which was something that happened last fall. Summertime.
Yeah.
So if you have lots of questions about the strategy behind the Food Forest at this point that we've been pushing forward, Kerry's the person to talk to. So this is Kerry Brown from Strong Roots Resources. He also, do you have seats left in that class?
For the harvest class, yes.
How many?
7 or 8.
Okay. So if you're in the Knoxville area on May 1st, he's got a unique ruminant processing class where there is a dispatch. I'm trying not to say words to get the video taken down right now. So dispatching by calming the animal and not using a firearm. So tell about the class.
Yeah, so we've brought in Stacy Carr, who is a regenerative. Stacy Carr Hooford she's married now. Is a regenerative farmer up around Johnson City, Tennessee, northeast end of the state, and she reached out to me to see if we wanted to partner up for a processing class that is based in biblical principles, which means, in short, we will have the animals that are to be dispatched in a holding pen the night before, so they will be calm, so there will not be any scampering around the farm trying to line up your sights on an animal, and so it involves a knife and not a firearm. So, and he's going to go into great detail on the calming, the actual how the animal actually dies, which I think a lot of people skip over. They go right to this is how we take the animal apart.
Yeah,
and we're going to go from live animal to animal in quarters. So, yeah, reach out to me if you'd like to come to that class. We're going to start around 10 a.m. on Friday, May 1st. It will probably take most of the day. We're going to do 3 animals. And I can get you a link to pay. It's $200. It's going to go up to $250 by the end of the workshop.
Yeah, so it's strongrootsresources.com. Click on shop, and you will find it.
You will find it there.
And it might be at the wrong price right now, so I should double check.
It's all right. Through the end of the weekend's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So $200. It goes up to $250 after that, and I'll be there.
Yeah.
I might bring some coffee to share too.
Please do.
Yeah.
Please do.
All right, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about rehabilitating pasture with ruminants. And this is something we've been working a lot on here. Glenn was just asking me, why is all this wire around? It's because we're rotating 3 sets of sheep right now because we're keeping some quarantined that we bought from Kerry. He gets them here. Here's what he says. I don't know if she's pregnant or not. And I took one look at the ewe and I'm like, oh, she's pregnant. And now we have a baby.
You had a bonus.
We got an Easter boy born, and he's 2 weeks old and full of vim and vigor.
Yeah.
So
Henry.
With that, let's talk about grazing.
Thanks. All right. Well, it's good to see you guys. It's always good to be here. This is kind of the highlight of my year. I don't like to get off the farm too often for more than an overnight, but I will scamper away for about 3 nights to come out to this workshop. So beginning in 2023, I got on board with a kind of a sheep leasing program. I had a lady who's a friend and a mentor, Marcy, who needed to get her sheep onto somebody else's property. And the agreement was pretty simple. I run the sheep for 3 years, and any harvest or sales, we split 50-50 through that time. So I was able to start with around 12 sheep was what we began with at the end of July in 2023. And I am now at about 46, and we have harvested a number of animals. We have sold animals. These animals are very good at making more of themselves. So, and I've had animals die. I've had animals die accidentally. unexpectedly, on purpose, planned. And so I have become a really big advocate of using sheep to improve marginal pasture. So where I've been moving these sheep around is my family farm. I'm the fourth generation on this farm. My great grandfather purchased the land in the 30s, and up until about the mid 90s, Dad ran cattle on it. Ran a few Angus cattle to keep the agricultural zoning, keep the taxes a little more reasonable. But around the mid 90s, he stopped doing the cows. And anywhere on the property that was a pain in the butt to bush hog just stopped being maintained. And as you guys have probably seen, succession comes into play. And in our region, kind of now situated around a lot of suburbia that is full of invasive plants, succession for us meant a lot of privet, a lot of bush honeysuckle, a lot of stuff that is not great for the native ecosystem, but it's also stuff that the sheep love to eat. So they have been my main tool in reclaiming a lot of land. So a lot of people are like, well, why sheep? Why didn't you get some goats? Because for 7 years, I've been listening to stories about goats misbehaving themselves out here. And
10 years.
Yeah, it has been my experience that sheep do about 85% of the work that the goats do. The only thing they don't really do is really chow down on woody stems, but they will take the leaves off of stuff with such vigor that it will eventually weaken the plant, especially if you cut the plant maybe knee height and you put them back on in an appropriate rotation. They kind of exhaust the root stores. So I would advocate for using sheep for almost everything that goats do. I would put them on privet. I would put them on something, awful like kudzu vine. I don't at this time have any plans to like deploy my sheep elsewhere the way like Knox goats and those kind of operations do, but you could build a business out of this. Absolutely. And they obey the fence. That's the biggest thing. They have been very easy to train to polywire, and anybody who doesn't respect the polywire doesn't get to hang around. So this was something we just kind of started. I just wanted to see if I even wanted to do it, but as soon as we had those sheep out there, something felt really right and natural about having them out there. We knew we needed ruminants. We've got about 17 to 20 acres that they get rotated across. So it's a lot of land to maintain if you don't have some kind of animal on it. And we found that I was a little worried about no perimeter fencing. So 30 years go by, most of the fencing is torn down. We really have there's nothing like the woven wire see around here. There's a few strands here and there of barbed wire from the cow days. And so I am able to run this system exclusively on three strands of polywire, step-in posts similar to the ones Tactical has out here, and a solar charger. So I've got these it took some adjusting, but I eventually kind of figured out like where do I want my my ground rod and my T-post to hang the charger from. So I've kind of got them deployed around the farm and areas to where I can feed like 4 paddocks off of one post. Because maybe you guys noticed, but ground rods are ridiculously expensive now. What happened to that? I think it was like $40 for an 8-foot one. So I am happy to show you guys pictures on my phone. Eventually I will pull together some slides so I can actually kind of show what these animals look like and what their impact looks like. But I've actually spent more time moving animals than making slideshows. Yeah.
Kerry, do you divide up your herd or do you keep them all together?
That's a good question. For the sake of my sanity and time, we do keep everybody together. And so, we don't separate out the ram, which means they have an early breeding cycle, which means we have lambs coming in wintertime, which is not always ideal for everybody, but it's not been an issue for us. 99% of the time, we've had no trouble lambing in the wintertime. If I were to divide them and have like my sire ram and a few wethers, so wethers are rams that have been castrated. So you can keep the boys together. And this is what Tactical does too. You can keep the boys together separate from the girls, but you have to be able to keep them where they can't see each other. And I do not think, one, it would double my work, and I just don't think I can manage it. I'm already moving them every couple of days. I average 10 to 12 hours a week on sheep care. Like, I'm going to be realistic about that. This is not something that you just, there's more stuff I could kind of like automate and streamline, and it's getting better, but there's a significant time investment. So yeah, it would double that. And then if they can see each other, they might decide that fence.
Not mine.
They will. I mean, according to,
I know.
yeah. So I will, for now, we stay together. And one issue that we did resolve this year is that any ram that was not intended to go to somebody else's farm before he was of breeding age just got banded, so he couldn't breed, because we did have a little bit of inbreeding that had undesirable results. So that's important, that you don't have the boys breeding back to their mothers. Yeah.
So if you castrate them, what's the purpose of keeping them around if
they're just meat? So yeah, so we'll raise the wethers out to be harvested. Yeah, they go to freezer camp. Yeah. And while we're on that topic, a lot of people ask, because we've also raised them out, fully intact. So far, the weight gain has been about the same. Some say that if you remove the testicles, that they don't gain weight as well. With these Katahdin hair sheep are what we have. I haven't noticed a difference so far. And it is nice that there's not, because I think I've got 5 wethers in with the flock right now. We've noticed that our sire ram is a lot more. He's pretty chill anyway, but he's not worried about having to assert his position in the flock. So it makes things more peaceable, because so William, who is he's not really a lamb anymore, the new ram that's out here, that's part of the ones I brought out, he, right before he came out here, he and Bobby, who's our sire ram, had quite the they reached an understanding, let's just say, that required a lot of head, but it wasn't fun to watch. And I was like, well, it'll, either he's getting processed or he'll be okay. So he ended up being okay, but it's not ideal, and it can become a safety concern too. So so my kind of strategy, tactics, all that good stuff on the farm is that I want to get everything. I want it to be close to what it used to look like when I was a little kid, in terms of all the native grasses that we have, all these native, and even if introduced, like beneficial forbs and herbs and all these things. My pastures are really mixed, really diverse, and there's kind of a succession throughout the entire year. We've got the spring flush of all those your early grasses, your fescues and things like that. All so forbs is just a nice word for a weed. So things like plantain, chickweed. In a little while, I'll get into some specifics on how the forage supports their health. But I want the exact opposite of a monocrop. I want more diversity. I want all kinds of heights of growth of certain things, and that includes them being able to access low growing trees. Like, I will coppice. I've got mulberry planted. I've got a lot of black locust, so I coppice those trees so they can access the leaf matter on that. So we feed them. Sheep will both graze and browse. So grazing is nose to the ground, and browse is basically at head or shoulder height. And while a lot of people say sheep won't climb, these sheep will climb. They will scramble up a leaning tree for leaves, for like winter creeper, which is a really invasive vine. You'll see it around here. They love winter creeper. Especially in the wintertime. If it's green, they'll eat it. If it's no, like, they don't. That's one thing. Like, they don't, like, I have seen them strip bark in certain instances, so they will girdle a tree if you don't protect it. If it's like something young, especially in very early spring when it's just full of sugars and that bark is very tasty. But I've not seen them like push stuff over or break stuff off. But my guardian donkey will rub on things. So we have certain trees that we protect with. I use a separate small charger and some netting, and I put that around those trees that we don't want her to rub on too much. We've got like some nice trees that my brother planted in his lower pasture, and so we use extra electricity to keep her off of those. Rubbing is actually more of a problem than actual like eating impact.
They eat the black locust.
Yeah, they do. They love those leaves. And so a lot of people will say, for instance, that the black locust is poisonous.
Right.
Black locust, cherry, a lot of your like black cherry, a lot of your elderberry, anything that kind of makes like a small seed can be poisonous. One, in like massive amounts, or where it's more dangerous is if it gets broken and it wilts. It suddenly becomes incredibly palatable to them. It's kind of like giving them candy, and they can, if they eat too much and they don't have enough other options, that can really muck them up. So, but it's not been my experience that just free choice locust leaf with 30 to 50 other specimens around for them to choose from. In fact, it kind of seems like things that are quote unquote poisonous are actually medicinal in the right amounts. I really trust my animals. I trust that they know what's beneficial to them and how much is too much. And I let what they're eating and their behavior tell me what's going on with them. So it's one of the things I always do when I move them into a new pasture, no matter what time of year it is. I hang out for a few minutes and I see what they go for in those first 5-10 minutes, because they'll like disperse. You probably heard Joel Salatin say every animal eats dessert first. That animal, for all it knows, will never get another bite again. So it will instinctively seek out the most nutritious and the tastiest thing right away. Which can I'll probably come back to this, but that's part of a grazing tactic, is you don't actually let them do that all the time. You kind of put them in smaller areas and you move them more frequently to get a more kind of even graze. Some people call that mob grazing or management intensive grazing. So they really, like I said, they will tell you what's going on by how they eat and what they search out. I keep our stocking density flexible based on season and condition. So, if we get into a really bad drought situation, I will reduce animals in one way or another. I will sell, I will harvest, anybody who's not holding good condition. Two of the ones that we're going to harvest on Friday don't shed well. And so for some reason they must be carrying a little bit more of a wool gene or something. And so those animals are not going to perform well in our heat. So anybody who cannot shed their coat thoroughly, you get pulled out of the running. You get pulled out of the gene pool. Shade's really important, critically important. So have that in mind. If you want to run sheep and you have a lot of open land, you either need to find a way to get them under trees, more the better, not just a tree in the pasture. You wind up with a compaction problem if you do that. We have a lot of like wood lines, so not like deep woods, but we have a lot of edging of woods. And so one of my earliest tools, and a tool or a method that a whole bunch of guys from the GSD crew have helped me out with, is cutting paths through those woods to get the fence line through. So and so I'm using, they have their shady edge, but it's a wide stretch. It's not one tight zone where all the animals are piling up, where all your manure winds up in one place and all your compaction winds up in one place. We want them to have options. I have kind of advocated for using sheep early on as part of a succession plan. So you can use sheep in marginal pasture to seriously improve your soil. That's been the biggest impact. It's just been remarkable. After one rotation, so I had this single cedar tree in a pasture, and it was just bare ground underneath the entire canopy. Never grew anything. Nothing was going on, and probably relatively acidic soil with it being a juniper and the needle drop and everything, and just the sheep were in a paddock with that tree one time. And by the time I brought them back around, there was plantain and chickweed growing under that tree. It just showed up. They woke the soil up. That's how I think of it. That biological activity of the imprints that their hooves make that kind of lets water because we're on a lot of hill and a lot of rolling hills, that little hoof imprint makes little water pockets. The mineral that they ingest, they do have free choice mineral. They excrete any extra. So we're gradually mineralizing all of these soils. and they paw a little bit, and of course, the manure. It's just this wonderful, beautiful cycle that I think is that's pretty much how land is intended to be used. So I heard this from Joel Salatin a couple of years ago, and I think maybe Alan brought it up too. So people are like, well, why don't you just mow or bush hog? And yes, you could do that. I mean, that's fine. I don't really like to be on a tractor. Ours is ancient and dangerous, and it makes me nervous. And so they realized that when that animal nips off that leaf, they excrete an enzyme in their saliva, which actually activates a more appropriate growth response than just cutting something with an iron blade. So I thought that was pretty dang cool. I like how it's kind of like nature sort of like designed this whole thing, So that's a lot of what I do is I'm observing what they're doing. I am, I'm paying attention to their behavior. I'm paying attention to what they're excited about, what they ignore. We try to stay ahead of things that like, for instance, the crown's beard is a kind of a pasture weed. They don't eat it. They will not touch it at any stage of growth. Broom sedge is another one. They might nip it when it puts up its freshest growth in like early May, and then they just ignore it. And so sometimes we will go behind and we will try to like cut things and kind of interrupt a seed cycle and give a chance for more beneficial plants to proliferate. But even just appropriate movement, and I'll kind of get into what that looks like, appropriate rotation, resets the structure of the soil, to kind of put it simply. And so the soil supports what those animals need. And as the soil structure changes, this stuff, these weeds that are trying to fulfill this role, they no longer have that role. The soil is no longer compacted. Those plants aren't hanging out. So it's kind of, I think it's just really, really stunning and beautiful to see what's changed in the 3 years that we've been running this flock. So kind of I could get real deep into all these different grazing tactics, but if you're starting out, there's a rule of thirds. This is kind of a good thing to follow at first. So you put some animals in an area that I like to say that you can kind of walk from one end to the other in like less than a minute. So that's a paddock. If I can walk a perimeter in like 3 minutes, that's a good sized paddock for the numbers I have right now. They're going to be in there for probably a couple of days this time of year when things really growing fast. We're getting a lot of rain. The rule of thirds is you pull those animals off that paddock and you put them in a new one when about 1/3 of the area looks grazed. So you can tell where they've clipped off the tips of your grass are blunted now. 1/3 has kind of been trampled, and 1/3 has been manured. And obviously this is very generalization because, the way sheep disperse, and they're going to favor more areas over others. But that's just kind of a good target. You don't want to look at it and see like these little nubs of grass, little nubs of weeds, and be like, oh, there's still stuff to eat out there. I can still see green. That's overgrazing. So the bottom line, like the difference between continuous grazing and rotational grazing is we are leaving leaf behind to continue that photosynthesis. This is what's important. If you let them stay on an area, they'll back graze. So as soon as that leaf even tries to push a little bit of sugar up and try to grow a little bit, if they're in an area where they can go back and hit that again, because there's like, oh, fresh nutrition, more candy, they hit that again, it continues to stunt the root system. And root systems are really what we're trying to build. What's going on underneath that soil profile is really what we're looking at. So we can prevent back grazing by any number of ways. One of the ways I've adjusted after a few seasons of doing this, I'll put them in the same size paddock, but I divide it up. So I just take my poly wire and I just throw in some dividers. Like I'll divide a 1/4 acre into 3 sections. And what people will call like tightening up or mob grazing. Those are kind of the terms. So we put more sheep on a smaller area, and what that forces is competition between them. So instead of where they can spread out and everybody gets ice cream, they have to tighten up, and like maybe these 5 get ice cream and these guys get whatever's next, broccoli, something not as exciting, still nutritious. And then before they're trying to go back and hit those new tips, we're pulling them off before that plant has even really had a chance to reset. The plants should be resetting themselves and regrowing when the sheep are not in there. So my rotation, ideally, is we don't return to that paddock for 18 days. Right now, with my sheep numbers and the land I have available, because I'm always kind of constantly I'm opening up a little bit more land, like a little half acre here, quarter acre there areas, where as we get things cleared and more fence line cleared, I'm able to return them in a month's time. So they take a full loop of the farm over about a month's time, spring, summer, and into the fall. Wintertime is kind of a different thing. I don't think I'm going to get too much into that tonight, but chat with me if you want to go more into like wintertime strategies. That's when we're building more soil by rolling out hay and that sort of thing, putting them on marginal areas and rolling out a lot of hay. That's how I fixed a lot of crappy pasture, just by rolling out hay. So 18 days. In most cases, with most parasites, this is what's important about your parasite life cycle. 18 days, if they excrete parasite eggs in their manure, if they are not back on that site for 18 days, or even better, 25, 30 days, the likelihood that they're going to consume a plant that has that parasite egg on it, like the parasite, just the whole life cycle, they miss that whole window. So that's kind of my bare minimum. So I try really, really hard to keep them off of anywhere within that timeline. When I first got them, of course, as it happens, a bunch died. A bunch just like went downhill within 2 weeks of having these sheep. And we had combined flocks. So Marcy brought me the first flock of like 6 or 7. And everybody was doing good. Everybody had good body condition and everything. And then she called me and she said, I've got this other flock. Do you want to take them? The lady who was going to take them can't. And I said, yeah, sure. She said, they've been quarantined. I'm pretty sure they're good to go. But she also told me, she was like, the sheep sometimes just die when you change their environment. They just don't thrive. And I said, well, let's find out. So we brought them in, and turned out that some of them were latently carrying barber pole worm, which is probably the nastiest parasite. It causes anemia. It literally drinks their blood. And, just all of a sudden I had sheep like losing condition. They get pale in their gums. You check their eyes and their gums, and they're pale, and they basically just bleed out internally. So right away, like 5 or 6 died, or I had to put down because they were not going to make it. Once they're symptomatic, basically, like once a sheep doesn't look like it's doing so good, it's already pretty much dead sheep walking. So the sheep are like most livestock; they're either on or off. So that site where I knew they were excreting manure that had those eggs in it, I kept them off of that for 6 months. And so I just skipped that entire section. And at the time, with those numbers, I was able to do that. If I had 3 times as many sheep, I would have had to have changed my stocking density somehow, because it was very important. So we were able to pretty effectively break that cycle. But all animals carry some load of parasite. Is it a matter of it making them sick or not? And so that's why it's important to keep them moving and keep them on clean ground, and to keep them on grass and forage that is as tall as you can keep it, because most parasites only go about 3 inches up the stalk of a plant. So if they're nubbing at the ground, that's when you're just going to have to be on a worming cycle. You're just going to have to be medicating them if you're.
The animal was able to do that exact research with barber pole worm, and showed exactly that for barber pole, that the barber pole worm stays on the bottom of the stems, and so overgrazing of any ruminant is very problematic when you are in an area with barber pole worm. If you can keep them up high. The other thing to remember is that a stem of grass is not homogeneous. It has more sugars typically up towards the tip, and more protein down further. So when you're feeding deeper into the stem, you're changing the sugar protein ratio that you're feeding as well. So it's just another thing to remember. And sometimes you vary that when based upon the conformance of the animal and what you need to do.
Yeah, Alan's spot on with that. And that's why I'm sure you guys have seen it. Like, you drive around and you see these fields that almost look like golf courses with like the occasional clump of green. And whatever that clump of green is, it's a little bit taller. That's just something that they're not going to eat. It's like new growth off of. If it's the summertime, it's probably broom sedge, or it's something, or it might be something that is poisonous that they know to avoid. So you want to see variety in your field. You don't want this kind of weird, lumpy golf course thing going on at all. How am I doing on time?
11:44.
15 minutes? 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Cool. All right. So those are your return intervals. 18 days to get to stay away, especially from that barber pole, higher grass lengths. 6 months to really do a pretty solid elimination. But you have to keep that up. You can't fall back on it. Like I said, because they're almost all of them are carrying some load. It's a matter of does it make them systemically ill. I'm a big fan I move almost always at walking speed when I'm setting all this stuff up. So when we're talking about building a paddock is step in post. It's artwork time.
I love it.
Step in post. It's got a metal spike. Tactical will tell stories about in certain areas he knows exactly the gap in the rock that he can jam that post down into. I'm not quite that bad, but we're still pretty rocky soil, so you wind up with a lot of bent posts. But the best you can buy, in this case, it matters. I will buy cheaper ones in areas where I put them through wood line and they stay. So as I have invested back into this operation, which I decided I wanted to keep doing this, I started buying more supplies, more reels, more poly wire. And in certain areas where it's always shaded and I know the poles are always there, like in the wood lines, I buy enough that they can stay. So I'll buy cheaper ones for that because they're not getting moved. The ones that get picked up and moved and bundled and thrown and dropped and ran over, I spend a little bit. You're looking at about $2 to $4 per post. I space them 12 feet, but I'm starting getting more like even 15 to 18 feet spacing. There's some little tensioners that you can buy now that just clips onto that line and just pulls up a little bit of slack. As long as you're not making contact with the ground with your line and grounding it out, it's no big deal. So I run these step in posts and then I do 3 strands. So my bottom strand is about 8 inches off the ground. Middle strand is about 2 clips up from there. And then if I only had the sheep and I didn't have a guardian donkey, this would be fine. But I have a standard guardian donkey, so she gets the top line because I tried to do 2 lines. And she looked at that and she said, "That's funny." And she just stepped over. So that top line that kind of hits her right there on the chest. Yeah, she was like, "I don't really feel like jumping." So
Same thing with my dogs. I run the top wire because the dogs will go over.
Yeah, the guard dogs will jump it. So this is and you with this kind of material, you can make any shape you want. So my paddocks will be purposely weird shapes. Like I want to get them under a tree that's surrounded by privet, and I want them to get in and eat that privet. It'll look like a amoeba, like it looks like the shape of amoeba if you're looking at it from a drone or from a plane. So I would say time investment. I know I said about 10 to 15 hours a week. I'd say a 1/4 acre paddock takes me 30 to 45 minutes. Depends on how much I'm hurting at the time, how much energy I have left, how hot it is. Yeah, step in post, and then the poly wire is on a reel. And
Fiberglass, or are they something else?
it's nylon. The nylon line. You're talking about the posts. The posts are mostly plastic. Yeah, I'm mostly doing the plastic ones. I've got a few of the fiberglass that I found cheap, and those are the ones that stay in the woods. I break off the steps on those all the time. So anything that's kind of getting a little bit beat up goes into the woods to stay put, and anything that's more durable gets moved around. And for the first 2.5 years of doing this, I was moving these materials around with a 2-wheeled wheelbarrow. And then last summer, Tactical, love his heart, gave me a 4-wheeler. The dude gave me a 4-wheeler, and and then I broke it, and then I fixed it because my small engine work is subpar. But we figured it wanted a $40 spark plug for some reason. So fine, I gave it one. So now I've got a 4-wheeler and an 8-foot trailer with put low sides on it. And I am no longer hauling around a gazillion miles of water hose. So water is everything. This is, I don't know, I haven't even touched on this yet. You got to know how you're going to get water to these guys. So the way my farm is laid out, roughly, it's real weird. So there's 4. Do we have an eraser up here? Paper towel. Thanks. So we've got, there's 1, 2, 3. There's 4 families that live on this farm. So we have our cabin at the top on the northeast corner, southeast corner, actually. Mom and Dad's house and my brother's house. And then we've got friends who are renting a plot and they live in an RV. And then there are, of course, there's some barns, various shed structures, odds and ends. Everybody has their gardens and things. And so I weave the sheep around everything. I pretty much, when we started doing this, you know, I asked my brother and my parents, I'm like, where do you not want them? Like I gave them some step-in posts and I said, mark borders. So we have like a few areas that we call the no poop zones. So like the field that sits between my brother and I and goes alongside the gravel drive up to his barn. We just made a lane that's like the width of 2 mower decks so that he could walk up there, or his girlfriend and her daughter could walk up there and not walk in poop. So it's kind of like a very weirdly shaped grid. So we've got my cabin. So we're actually, I think I misspoke. We are on the southeast corner of the property. My cabin, my shed, driveway, Dad's barn, my brother's house, Mom and Dad's house, and that is the primary building infrastructure. So we've got this gravel drive, and then there's pastures below Mom and Dad. There's about an acre here. There's about 3 acres here below Tyler. This is also below here is also another driveway down to the road, paved driveway. And so I will even graze them. There's like a 10-foot, 15-foot easement strip down the driveway. I don't take them all the way to the road because it's a 4-lane highway and I'm paranoid, but I'll even graze them in strips down alongside the driveway because there's things like, again, the privet, the bush honeysuckle, the winter creeper, and all kinds of stuff. So we will, I don't know how I could really show a rotation, but I kind of start them. There's a pretty big field, big's relative, I don't know, an 1.5 acre field. This gets divided up into 4. This is also where our sorting corral and catch corral for the sheep is. And then I didn't even mention, this is past Dad's barn. So this is west of Dad's barn. And there's another 7 to 10 acres in here that I can graze. So with this kind of layout, I have this kind of very snaky route that I take them through. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter all that much about keeping the exact same.
Or are you making laneways and moving into other pieces?
Yeah, that's why I guess that's what I was trying to get to. Because of the way things are kind of chopped up and I can't put them in certain areas, I will set up chutes. I will set up chutes with polywire and I'll cut them across. Like I'll cut them across Tyler's backyard. I cut them across the corner of Tyler's backyard, past the orchard and into, another field. I make chutes to take them across the driveway. So there's several times that we're crossing the driveway. First time we crossed the driveway, and it was gravel. Everybody was weirded out. Everybody was like, I don't like the texture. It's very strange. And they all just stood there and just looked at it. And it was, I was standing on the other side with the feed bucket, which is normally very, motivating. They're funny, but what's really neat about these sheep is that they remember. And so because I do follow kind of the same route, just as long as my timing is good, they've learned, like I still use my chutes. Like I said, without any perimeter fencing anymore, I'm too wary of not having that transfer chute, but I can pretty much just open the gate to the chute and I don't have to take the bucket. They just know where they're going. What's that?
You have to energize the chutes.
I don't bother. We're talking about, it takes 45 seconds in most times to take them through it. Yeah.
How many total grazable acres do you figure you have?
It's about 17.
Okay.
Yeah, with a little bit more coming ready all the time as I beat back the worst of the overgrowth. And if I can get, like, if I can, a lot of what I do is either with a small chainsaw or the brush blade on the trimmer. If I can get a fence through it, I'll put them in it. I mean, even if it's briars, and Primrose gets kind of aggravated. She doesn't like it because she likes to run, but I'll put them in rough spots, and they open up that lower, I guess, lower canopy, whatever, that kind of shoulder and down level. They open that up by defoliating everything, and then I can kind of follow with more equipment. And I mean, if I got to get equipment in here anyway, fine. Feed the sheep first and then follow. Like, so last May, we dropped money on renting a forestry mulcher, and we opened up 4 acres in the lowermost portion of the southeast fields that previously had been completely dominated by Calorie pear, the bastard child of Bradford pear and the thorns and everything. So forestry mulcher was one of the tools that we dropped money on. And now I wouldn't do that if I couldn't put the sheep on it. Like, if there'd be no point. The sheep maintain that for me. It would have been wasted money.
Is there a maximum ratio of like areas you're trying to get them to open up versus like good established pasture you can trade from, or they can be 100%?
Yeah, I'd say it's 50-50 right now. Like 50% is like good, prepared forage, ready to go. They're happy. About the other, I don't know, maybe more like 70-30. So 70 nice stuff, 30% is still pretty marginal. It's more brush things that they're eating in there. And they're usually just not in there as long because there's not a lot on the ground for them. Everything is honeysuckle and privet and all that kind of stuff that they're eating. Yeah.
It'll also change over time. I'm learning to deal with new problems that I never had before because the pasture is turning into what it's supposed to be, not what it was before.
Yeah, that's kind of the cool thing about if you do this relatively well. I'm not talking perfect, ideal, like just pretty good. You're moving the animals every few days. When the soil bank really starts to wake up, it's pretty incredible what starts coming up. Like, and then also because of the way we roll out hay in the wintertime, so they're, the hay that they're not eating is getting trampled into the ground, and you're adding all this biomass, and you're adding to the seed bank. So now I have blue stem and brome grass and all these really good forage grasses showing up because of putting we have a good hay supplier and putting the hay down. Yeah.
So basically what we start seeing that happening, the weeds are going away, but you still have diversity with multiple different types of good things.
Yeah. Yeah. There are some people who say that if you graze sheep tightly enough on a tight enough rotation, they will eventually graze out, quote unquote, the weeds, which is actually what they prefer. They prefer the leafy weeds, broadleaf weeds, over grasses much of the time. And so a lot of people will use sheep to eventually transition to cows because cows are a little more about grasses. But then again, I mean, I've seen cows that like chow down on plantain and chicory and stuff like that. So I don't think it's like a real rigid rule. It depends on that animal's kind of genetic disposition and everything too.
What you're doing is you're actually changing the successional state of the soils, and so you'll change the germination conditions for these annual plants. And so once you have moved towards a more fungally dominant regime and you have the ecology in place, what you'll find is that your quote unquote early succession weedy species, their seeds are still there, but the germination conditions that they're looking for are no longer there. So they won't germinate. So it's not just I've eaten all of the weeds out of there. No, you'll still have weeds, quote unquote, weed seeds. And you need those because if something happens to your soil and gets reset to early succession, you want them to come back in and help you fix it, right? So that's good. What you're seeing is that the animals will basically, their impact will change the successional state and the fungal bacterial ratio of the soil and will drive what is going to germinate and grow in that soil most easily, most readily.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Like Alan said, you want, like, if an area of soil gets disturbed for some reason. I don't know. My brother gets out there and screws around with the skid steer and tears up a big patch of sod. That never happens. I'm trying to make sure he only does that on his side and not my side, but I can't be too hard on Tyler because he helps me out quite a bit. But whatever, a tree comes down and we've got to get it cleaned up, and so the soil gets torn up. Those weeds are good. I want them back. I want them to start, to cover the soil again, to keep that biological action going. And then, so you'll see patches that are recently reset and patches 10 feet away that are, where native things have returned. So I want to get into a concept that I learned about back in February. This is kind of an overseas term. It's kind of like a European term. Herbal lays, Leys. A lay is a paddock. It's another word for a paddock. And I found the work of a fella named Turner. Turner's work, Alan? Newman Turner. This was kind of like post World War II era. This guy, his books went out of print, and then they recently kind of have been revived, and so there's new editions out with forewords by Alan Nation and Joel Salatin. Newman Turner, really smart guy. So this guy was farming in post-war Europe. Everything was expensive. He couldn't get a hold of, ironically enough, this was when chemical fertilizers were really coming on the scene. But at the time, they were unaffordable or unavailable. And so he went back to basically it was permaculture. He was like, how do I fix the soil on this overcropped, monocropped, overgrazed farm in, I forget exactly which part of England, but somewhere out that way. And so he basically figured out, again, a blend of indigenous knowledge and kind of old school knowledge about purposely managing for exactly the kind of healthy forage that, in his case, mostly cows needed. And so when the two new sheep that I brought out here and the bonus lamb have kind of become Jenny's roommates. And so Jenny Hill and I have been down this rabbit hole of like nutritional support for sheep. Like she's big into that. I'm sure Sherry, you'll probably appreciate this too. We went way deep on how can we add things and manage the land for specific system supportive needs. So Jenny went out and she was a wonderful research assistant and gave me, I just asked her like a list, like give me 5 supportive plants that can be like part of your rotation. So ideally you seed them in and they are available when they need to be available to those animals at the right times of year. So pasture herbs for sheep health and paddock diversity. First one, I've probably mentioned it before, is plantain. So around here, the holler is really heavy on broadleaf plantain. Narrowleaf is also good. This is the weed that will show up anytime the soil has been disturbed, and it is really good at mining, bringing minerals up out of the soil and providing that to whatever's grazing it. Really supportive of their gut health and reduces inflammation. It's got natural antimicrobial properties and will support wound healing, high in calcium and trace minerals, and sheep will seek it out instinctively. Yeah.
With you being the plant guy as well, is there much difference as far as compounds and things in between broadleaf and narrowleaf plantain?
Not that I've been able to really know for sure. It would probably be a cool idea to get like a Brix reading on it, though. That would be a good option. Yeah, we could totally do that. Cool.
Seems to depend more on the growth habitat.
Yeah.
The broadleaf can be slightly more medicinal under ideal circumstances, but they're very similar.
Yeah. I've used them like as a first aid for myself. I've had equally good response from both when I've been stung by a bee or something like that. Another one is chicory. Chicory looks a lot like dandelion, so that's kind of something to look for. Also good at runs a deep tap root, so it pulls a lot of nutrient and makes it available to animals. Has natural anti-parasitic properties. Will pull up zinc and potassium. It improves their weight gain and resilience. And introducing chicory seed to a paddock is very easy. And so one method I've seen for both plantain, and chicory, and probably all of these that I'm going to mention, red clover, is to seed it in areas where they have consumed a round bale of hay. So because I have so many animals, it makes more sense for me to purchase round bales instead of the square bales. And so we set those out. Sometimes I roll them out, but sometimes I'll set one out, and that will be, their feed for they takes them about a week and a half to go through a round bale. And what's left at the bottom that doesn't get consumed is rich in biomass. And so I will throw down plantain seed, chicory seed, red clover seed, like a brassica mix. I'll just throw it right on to that basically beginning to compost site. And so when when all that starts to come up in the spring, you've got this big 4 foot, 5 foot diameter spot where all this stuff is coming up, and they just head right for it. Just when they go to that pipe, they just head right for it. And then again, it's one of those things, if you pull them off in time and those plants have an opportunity to set seed and spread seed, you're just continuing that cycle. Red clover, high in protein, has a lot of soil building capabilities. It's good for their growth and milk production, nitrogen fixer. It contains phytoestrogens, which can be beneficial in moderation. But this is not something that you want to dominate your pasture. You hear about people wanting to overseed a whole lot of clover for nitrogen fixing, but it can kick off rumen upset and even bloating if they consume it too much. So this is something you want bits of here and there. You don't want a pasture absolutely overcome with red clover. It also has a lot of hormonal support for the ewes when they are producing milk and they're right after lambing. Yarrow is another good one. Circulation, immunity boost, another antiparasitic, kind of mild antiparasitic and antibacterial action, and also can help them regulate their body temperature in the heat, which that was one I didn't know. So when Jenny found that out, I thought that was very cool. 10 minutes? Okay, cool. I'm just about cool. Sheep sorrel. That's got a lot of oxalates, supports liver and detox pathways. It likes pretty crappy soil. Sheep sorrel is one of the first things that shows up on our farm if the soil gets disturbed. So you don't want it as a monocrop, but it's another one that's just there's probably a reason it's called sheep sorrel. It's kind of shaped like, the leaf is shaped like a kind of looks like a sword with the hilt is the shape. Kind of looks like an arrow. And a few more honorable mentions here: dandelion for liver support, fennel, radicchio, garlic chives. I've noticed, the wild onions and wild garlic comes up real early. It's one of the first things that kind of pop when the soil starts to warm up, and those sheep head right for it when they go to a new paddock. Nettles, we've been in nettles a lot. I've picked up nettle seed, stinging nettle seed, and I want to sow certain patches to have available to them. That is calcium, iron, magnesium. So a lot of support for red blood cell production, milk production, and also helps with their coat and their hooves. Dock and sorrel, big old taproot, high iron content. So all those things can be easily tossed in. The seed is still inexpensive. The best seed company I have found is Welter, Welter, American company. They'll still send you a really cool black and white catalog, which I love to flip through. So I think I will pause there and I know I've been kind of answering questions throughout, but let me make some time for questions.
If you're feeding in nettle, see if you can get wood nettle instead of stinging nettle.
Wood nettle?
Wood nettle is the indigenous
Wood?
Oh,
wood
cool.
nettle. It's actually tastier too. But wood nettle is it also stings, but it is very similar from a lot of ways as a food, medicinally slightly different. But stinging nettle was actually brought over from Europe.
Okay, cool.
So it's been naturalized now, but there's a lot of good biological symbiosis with the native wood nettles.
Awesome, good to know.
I
What
think
you got,
it's less invasive too, wouldn't you say?
It can be invasive in certain.
the stinging nettle's
can
worse,
be invasive in certain ecosystems.
Yeah, I wouldn't throw it in my garden, but I'm okay with it being a ways away in pasture where I know the sheep are going to be there. Yeah.
Can you address the positive or the beneficial characteristics of your breed? Why you pick that breed? Why people might want to look at that breed?
Yes. So I have They're full Katahdins. They are not. They're not crossed with Dorpers or St. Croix or all these other hair breeds. So number one reason is they shed, and so I do not have a wool operation. I do not have to shear sheep. They should shed. If they don't shed, you don't get to stay. And so yeah, the Katahdins were developed in Maine. So they're very they're very hardy in the cold weather, which is great because they do lamb in January and February. Really good weight grain, really good meat breed, and pretty docile. They are not too. The rams generally are not aggressive. Bobby is like, he's just like a stoner. He's just out there just like chilling all the time. He's just so, he's just so chill. A previous ram I had kind of started to get an attitude, and he got traded out. So temperament, the weight gain, and they are very adapted to all this variety of forage. On occasion, I run them across enough kind of like rocky and rough ground that they tend to, if you kind of turn their hoof over and you can kind of see where it can grow over the toe. A lot of times I'll take them up that gravel driveway on purpose and let everybody kind of work on their hooves. Nope. They have a long tail anyhow, and I'm kind of one of those people, I kind of think nature designed things for a reason. So I do not dock tails because that long tail basically kind of keeps the flies away from their butt. So if they go through a round of, sometimes when you switch from hay, if you switch too suddenly from hay to the fresh forage, they'll get scours, which is diarrhea. And so that tail action keeps flies and other biting insects away.
Right now.
Yeah. Speaking of flies, there's a wonderful product called Fly Predators. They are, I want to say they're a nematode. They are basically they are an insect that you can order online. Fly Predators from a place called Spalding Labs. They eat fly larvae, so you introduce them to manure piles where flies are breeding. And we went from gosh awful, like seriously concerned about flies and disease to a few. They're about $55 a month for the batch that I need to buy for the size of our land and the size of our flock. Well worth it. It's like a subscription program. I wished they must not be able to overwinter very well, is my best guess, because I always have to reintroduce them. So Fly Predators have been a wonderful tool.
So you spread that on the paddock?
Yeah. They ship them when they're still in their pupa form, and they're kind of ship them with some sawdust. And you kind of start to see, they basically look like the tiniest, like a third of the size of the tiniest ant you've ever seen with wings. That's what they look like. You can barely see them. You start to see a few kind of emerge in the package, and then I just scatter handfuls directly onto mostly donkey manure. And if somebody's making, some sheep out there is making cow pies instead of pellets, I put it on there.
You're moving those sheep every 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Then you go back to that and you treat that particular pasture.
Yeah, so I put them where I put the Fly Predator out where they have just been.
Kind of hang around. I mean, do they store well over the course of the?
They certainly propagate themselves throughout the warm weather, because I've put out like one package on one end of the farm, and a month later when we're on the other end and there's a donkey pile, they've already made it over there. So they really spread themselves around. I just don't think they survive.
Over the whole, you can
do it in a small area.
Use it when you need it.
Yep. Yeah, Margo.
Why did you choose a guard donkey?
Because my dog absolutely hates other dogs. And I knew I was gonna, and the other reason is, again, with the lack of perimeter fencing, the donkey came trained to the polywire. And so I did not want to try to train guardian dogs to polywire, because we are adjacent to all this development. Like, the farm was there first and all the development came later. And so I couldn't have a guardian dog in somebody else's neighborhood or backyard or whatever. And so Prim has been, donkeys are, for whatever reason, just genetically hate anything canine. And our biggest danger is coyotes and loose dogs. And so loose dogs. Yeah, loose neighborhood dogs. Yeah, somebody who lets a dog out. And we're surrounded by subdivisions. So, yeah, on occasion, you'll see somebody's dog, like, take off across, the field, but I've never, so far so good, I've never had an issue with them getting in with the sheep. I'm pretty sure a dog sees a donkey and is like, this is a bad idea. There just seems to be some kind of understanding there. So that's why we went with the donkey. A lot of people are very picky about that. A lot of people will say never in a million years. Donkeys, they can turn on a dime. They can decide, like, I'm going to pick this. Like, there's been a couple times she's picked up a sheep, just picks them up by the scruff. And I'm like, Prim, put them down. And she's like, okay. But if I'm not there, but so far so good. And I tell you what, the first time we had her and the lambs were coming in like crazy, we had, very busy lambing season in that first winter. And so there's just like lambs just everywhere. And Prim's just like standing there and they're all around her legs. And I was watching her. I was like, this is going to be the test if this is going to work or not. And she was like, okay, I need to move. And so she would pick one foot up and like look where she could like put it down and not step on a lamb. She has never harmed a lamb. The only, like, the ones when she picks up Bobby from time to time, but I think he's like trying to flirt or something. And she's just like, stop. So, yeah, I've never seen, if she ever picks up a lamb, or if she shakes anybody, we're going to have to figure something out. But 3 years in, so far, so good. Yeah. Do I have a couple minutes? Any more questions?
Yeah, 1 minute.
1 minute?
One question.
Yeah, Ryan.
Quick comment. It's not a question. It's just, I looked up the flat predators. The interwebs say that they're a gnat-sized wasp.
Okay.
Oh,
Cool. All right. Yeah. That was somebody told me about them. Somebody who kept horses told me about them 2 summers ago. I was like, good enough for me. And I went for it. And then I was one of those things that I just didn't follow up except to follow the directions.
How big are you going to get with your flock based on what you've got?
I think my appropriate stocking density is actually about 30. We're at 46 right now. We've got 9 lambs that are due to be ewe lambs that are going to be sold. So that'll get us back about where we need to be. Right now, with my numbers, I'm moving a little faster than I really want to be moving to keep them on fresh forage and have enough.
I'm assuming you use meat for yourself, but are you selling the lambs for sheep for meat to third parties or?
Yeah, so we're partnered with a private buying club. It's basically like a meat-based buyers co-op. And so we reproduce exclusively for them, and then the other half we can keep for ourselves, or I can trade, barter it. It's all done under a PMA. Yeah.
Thanks, Kerry.
Yeah, you're welcome, guys. Thank you.
All right, we've got some water and cups over here if you need it. But actually, next we have lunch at the Heller Homestead. It is going to feature a fermented corned beef from our cow. I just took the whole belly of the cow and I used whey to ferment it and some spices. And then we did pressure cook it, so it's not going to give you any beneficial bacteria. And then slice it just because, yeah. So that's the sandwiches, but that's one of the sandwich choices.
Nice.
So
Thank you.
lunch is in
like
about 15
Powerline?
minutes.
I wouldn't think so. I would I would want to know about that for sure. I selectively use some herbicide for certain areas to address things that I can't address mechanically, and I always do that after the sheep have been through, and I know it's going to be a month before they're back.
Right.
But all those chemicals will have instructions.